From early childhood, the human mind is trained to associate happiness with movement towards something else. We are taught that fulfillment lives in achievement, in arrival, in reaching a point where nothing more is required. This conditioning quietly shapes the belief that paradise exists somewhere outside the present moment. It becomes a destination, a reward, or an escape. Yet this belief is the very thing that prevents peace from being experienced. Paradise is not a place that can be reached by changing geography, circumstances, or social status. It is the state of awareness, and awareness does not require travel. It only requires presence. When paradise is imagined as a location, the mind is always leaning forward. It postpones contentment, convincing itself that peace will arrive later, after problems are solved, after goals are reached, after life becomes easier. This constant postponement creates a subtle dissatisfaction that follows people everywhere. Even when they achieve what they once desired, the satisfaction is brief, because the mind quickly identifies the next condition that must be fulfilled. The problem is not that goals exist, but that inner peace is tied to them. Awareness, however, does not depend on outcomes. It is available regardless of success or failure. A state of awareness means seeing reality clearly, without unnecessary interpretation. Most suffering does not come from events themselves, but from the stories attached to them. The mind labels experiences as good or bad, acceptable or unacceptable, and then reacts emotionally to those labels. Awareness interrupts this automatic process. It allows observation before reaction. When awareness is present, a person notices thoughts arising rather than being pulled into them. This distance creates freedom. Life continues to happen, but it no longer controls the inner state. Paradise is experienced when resistance drops. Resistance is the internal refusal to accept what is already happening. It appears as complaint, comparison, regret, or anxiety. These reactions consume enormous mental energy and cloud perception. Awareness does not argue with reality, it studies it. The moment reality is allowed to be as it is, tension softens. This does not mean passivity or giving up. It means responding intelligently instead of emotionally. In this response, clarity replaces chaos. Many believe awareness is abstract or spiritual, but it is deeply practical. Awareness shows itself in how one breathes, walks, eats, and listens. When attention is fully present, even simple acts feel complete. Eating becomes nourishment rather than distraction. Walking becomes grounding rather than rushing. Listening becomes connection rather than waiting to speak. Paradise is not created by adding extraordinary experiences, but by fully inhabiting ordinary ones. The mind often seeks intensity to feel alive, strong emotions, constant stimulation, endless entertainment. Yet this craving dulls sensitivity over time. Awareness restores sensitivity. It allows subtle experiences to be felt again. The warmth of sunlight, the rhythm of breathing, the quiet between thoughts. These experiences were always there but unnoticed. Paradise emerges when perception becomes refined enough to recognize them. One of the greatest obstacles to awareness is identification with thought. People mistake thoughts for reality, believing every mental narrative without question. Thoughts about the past create guilt or regret. Thoughts about the future generate fear or anticipation. Awareness recognizes thoughts as temporary events, not absolute truths. When this recognition stabilizes, the mind becomes a tool rather than a master. Silence between thoughts becomes familiar, and in that silence, peace naturally arises. Paradise as awareness also means understanding impermanence. Everything changes. Emotions, situations, relationships. When this truth is resisted, attachment forms and suffering follows. Awareness accepts change as a natural law. Instead of clinging, it adapts. This adaptability creates resilience. When pleasant moments pass, gratitude remains. When difficult moments arise, patience appears. Life flows, and awareness flows with it. It is important to understand that awareness is not indifference. It does not make a person cold or detached from life. On the contrary, it deepens engagement. When awareness is present, actions become intentional, words become measured, decisions become aligned with values rather than impulses. This alignment creates inner integrity, and integrity produces peace. Paradise is felt not because life is perfect, but because one is no longer divided internally. Many search for paradise by changing external conditions, believing that a different environment will bring inner calm. While environment influences mood, it cannot replace awareness. Without awareness, even the most beautiful surroundings become background noise. With awareness, even challenging environments become places of growth. This is why peace is portable. It is not dependent on where one is, but on how one is. Training awareness requires discipline, but not force. Simple practices: observing the breath, limiting distractions, spending time in silence, reflecting on reactions, gradually sharpen perception. Over time, awareness becomes a natural posture rather than a deliberate effort. The mind learns to rest in the present instead of escaping from it. This rest is not sleep, it is alert calmness. Paradise reveals itself when the present moment is no longer treated as a problem to be solved, but as a reality to be experienced. The urge to escape weakens, the need to control softens. Life is met directly without filters. In that direct meeting, a quiet satisfaction emerges, not excitement, not pleasure, but a deep sense of being grounded and complete. This state does not eliminate ambition or responsibility. It simply removes the belief that happiness depends on their outcome. One can work, strive, and improve without inattention. Effort becomes clean, action becomes purposeful. Success is appreciated without attachment, and failure is faced without self-destruction. This balance is the sign of true awareness. Paradise, then, is not hidden from us. It is hidden by distraction. When attention is reclaimed, reality reveals itself as sufficient, not easy, not always pleasant, but meaningful and alive. Awareness does not promise comfort, it offers truth. And in truth, there is freedom. To live in awareness is to stop waiting for life to begin. It is to recognize that this moment, unrepeatable, alive and demanding attention, is all there ever is. When this is seen clearly, the search for paradise ends naturally. What remains is presence, and within presence, a quiet joy that does not depend on circumstances. This is not a destination reached someday. It is a state realized now. Human suffering is often misunderstood as something imposed by life, fate, or other people. While pain is an unavoidable part of being alive, suffering is not the same as pain. Pain is what happens, suffering is what we add to what happens. This addition comes from resistance to the present moment. When the mind argues with reality, tension is created. When it insists that life should be different than it is, suffering begins. The present moment is neutral. It simply exists. Our relationship to it determines whether we experience peace or conflict. Resistance appears in many forms. It can be obvious, like anger, frustration, or resentment. It can also be subtle, like constant worrying, replaying conversations, or quietly wishing things were otherwise. These reactions are not happening in the present moment itself. They are mental movements away from it. The body remains here, but the mind leaves. This split creates internal pressure. Life continues as it is, but the mind fights an imagined version of how it should be. This fight cannot be won, because reality does not negotiate. When something unpleasant happens, the initial sensation is often brief. A sharp emotion arises, a discomfort in the body, a sense of loss or disappointment. If the mind allows this sensation to be felt fully, it naturally changes and fades. However, resistance prevents this natural process. The mind labels the sensation as unacceptable and tries to escape it. This escape takes the form of blame, distraction, justification, or suppression. Instead of passing through, the experience gets stored. Over time, these stored resistances accumulate and form patterns of chronic suffering. The present moment includes everything that is happening now: sensations, emotions, thoughts, and external conditions. Resisting the present means rejecting some part of this reality. Often, people accept pleasant moments easily, but resist unpleasant ones. This selective acceptance fragments experience. Awareness, by contrast, is inclusive. It does not demand that reality be comfortable. It simply observes what is happening without interference. In this observation, suffering begins to dissolve, not because the situation changes, but because the inner struggle ends. The mind believes resistance is protective. It thinks that by fighting discomfort, it will eliminate it. In truth, resistance amplifies discomfort. Tension in the body increases. Breathing becomes shallow. Thoughts become repetitive. The nervous system stays activated long after the original event has passed. Awareness reveals this mechanism. When discomfort is met with acceptance, the body relaxes, the breath deepens, and the emotion completes its cycle. Acceptance is not weakness. It is intelligence aligned with how the body and mind function. Many people confuse acceptance with approval. Accepting the present moment does not mean liking it or agreeing with it. It means recognizing that it is already happening. Only from this recognition can effective action arise. When resistance dominates, action becomes reactive. Words are spoken in anger. Decisions are made from fear. When acceptance is present, responses become measured. One can still set boundaries, make changes, and seek improvement, but without inner violence. Time plays a powerful role in resistance. The present moment is often resisted because of attachment to the past or anticipation of the future. Regret pulls the mind backward, replaying what cannot be changed. Anxiety pushes the mind forward, imagining what has not yet occurred. Both movements remove attention from what is actually happening. Suffering thrives in this displacement. Awareness returns attention to now, where life is manageable and real. The body is always in the present moment. It does not regret yesterday or worry about tomorrow. It responds only to what is happening now. This is why resistance often shows up physically as tension, fatigue, or illness. The body carries what the mind refuses to feel. When awareness reconnects the mind to the body, resistance becomes visible. Sensations are felt directly rather than explained away. In feeling them fully, they lose their grip. A common form of resistance is the need for control. The mind wants certainty and predictability. When life does not cooperate, frustration arises. The present moment is inherently uncertain. It unfolds according to countless variables beyond personal control. Resisting this uncertainty creates constant anxiety. Awareness recognizes what can be influenced and what cannot. Letting go of the illusion of control does not create chaos. It creates peace. Energy previously wasted on resistance becomes available for purposeful action. Suffering also increases when identity becomes entangled with experience. When people define themselves by what happens to them, resistance intensifies. Criticism feels like an attack on the self. Failure feels like personal worthlessness. Loss feels like annihilation. Awareness separates identity from experience. One has experiences. One is not the experience. This separation allows emotions to arise and pass without threatening the sense of self. Freedom grows in this space. It is important to understand that resistance is often unconscious. People may not realize they are fighting the present moment. They simply feel exhausted, restless, or dissatisfied without knowing why. Developing awareness is the process of making this resistance visible. Once seen, it loses much of its power. One cannot release what one does not recognize. Observation is the beginning of freedom. Training acceptance begins with small moments. Feeling the breath without changing it. Noticing tension without immediately trying to fix it. Allowing silence without filling it. These simple practices recondition the nervous system to tolerate presence. Over time, the threshold for discomfort increases and the need for resistance decreases. Life feels less threatening, not because it has become easier, but because the capacity to meet it has grown. When resistance dissolves, something unexpected appears. Clarity. Without the fog of mental struggle, perception sharpens. One sees situations as they are, not as feared or hoped. This clarity enables wise action. Problems are addressed directly instead of emotionally. Relationships improve because reactions soften. Inner space expands. Suffering ends not when life becomes perfect, but when the fight with life stops. The present moment does not ask for agreement. It asks for attention. Giving it attention does not trap a person, it liberates them. Each moment becomes workable. Even pain becomes bearable when it is not multiplied by resistance. The practice is simple but not easy. Notice when the mind says this should not be happening. In that sentence lies the root of suffering. Replace it not with forced positivity, but with honest acknowledgement this is happening. From this truth, peace begins. Not dramatic peace, not constant pleasure, but a grounded stability that can hold both joy and difficulty. When the present moment is allowed to be as it is, life no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes a teacher. Each experience, pleasant or unpleasant, carries information. Resistance blocks the lesson. Acceptance reveals it. In learning from life, instead of fighting it, suffering loses its purpose and quietly fades. Most people believe fulfillment is something to be achieved by accumulation. More knowledge, more success, more recognition, more comfort. This belief creates a constant sense of incompleteness, as if life is a puzzle missing essential pieces. Yet incompleteness is not a fact of existence. It is a state of perception. What feels missing is often not an external object, but internal clarity. Discipline and attention do not create wholeness. They reveal what is already complete by removing the noise that obscures it. Attention is the gateway through which reality is experienced. Whatever receives attention grows in significance. When attention is scattered, life feels fragmented. Thoughts jump from past to future, from desire to regret, from distraction to distraction. In this state, even abundance feels insufficient because it is never fully experienced. Discipline is the structure that gathers attention and brings it home to the present moment. Without discipline, attention leaks. With discipline, attention becomes steady, and steadiness reveals depth. Discipline is often misunderstood as harsh control or denial of pleasure. In truth, discipline is a form of respect for one's energy and time. It is the conscious choice to act in alignment with long-term clarity rather than short-term impulse. When impulses dominate, attention is pulled outward towards stimulation. When discipline is present, attention is directed inward toward observation. This inward direction does not isolate a person from life. It reconnects them to it. The mind naturally seeks comfort and avoids effort. Left unchecked, it gravitates toward habits that provide immediate relief but long-term dissatisfaction. Endless scrolling, overeating, constant entertainment, and compulsive thinking dull sensitivity. Discipline interrupts this dulling process. It creates space between urge and action. In that space, awareness emerges. Awareness is not something added. It is uncovered. Like dust wiped from glass, clarity appears when obstruction is removed. Attention trained through discipline becomes sharp and receptive. Simple experiences regain richness. Eating becomes tasting. Listening becomes understanding. Movement becomes coordination. When attention is whole, the present moment reveals layers previously unnoticed. This fullness creates a sense of completeness. Nothing new has been added to life. Perception has changed. What was once overlooked now feels sufficient. The body is an essential teacher in this process. Discipline of the body, through posture, breath, and movement, anchors attention. When the body is neglected, attention becomes abstract and unstable. When the body is engaged consciously, attention becomes grounded. Breathing slowly and fully, standing upright, moving with intention. These are not trivial actions. They regulate the nervous system and quiet mental agitation. In this quiet, completeness becomes perceptible. Discipline also applies to thought. Not every thought deserves belief or continuation. An undisciplined mind follows every mental narrative, exhausting itself in imagined problems and comparisons. Attention, disciplined through observation, learns to watch thoughts without feeding them. Thoughts arise and pass like weather. The sky does not chase the clouds. In this witnessing, identification loosens. The sense of lack created by constant comparison begins to dissolve. Many people mistake busyness for purpose. They fill their days with activity, believing movement equals progress. Yet without attention, movement becomes noise. Discipline reorients action toward intention. One thing done fully is more nourishing than many things done partially. When attention is not divided, actions feel complete. There is less regret, less mental replay, less sense of unfinished business. Completion is felt not because tasks disappear, but because presence accompanies them. Completeness is often obscured by excess. Too many choices, too much information, too many obligations dilute attention. Discipline simplifies. It reduces unnecessary inputs. It says no where no is needed. This reduction is not loss, it is refinement. As excess falls away, what remains gains clarity. Life feels lighter, not emptier. The fear of missing out fades, replaced by appreciation of what is here. Attention trained through discipline reveals that many desires are not genuine needs, but attempts to escape discomfort. When discomfort is met directly with awareness, the urge to escape weakens. The need to fill space with noise diminishes. Silence becomes tolerable, even nourishing. In silence, completeness becomes obvious. Nothing needs to be added to this moment for it to be whole. Discipline also builds trust in oneself. Each time a conscious choice is made over an unconscious habit, self-respect grows. This self-respect creates inner stability. Stability reduces craving. Craving often arises from insecurity, the belief that something external is needed to feel okay. When inner stability is established, craving loses urgency. Attention rests more easily. Completeness is felt not as excitement, but as calm sufficiency. It is important to understand that discipline is not about perfection. It is about consistency. Small, repeated acts of attention reshape perception over time. A few minutes of stillness each day. Conscious breathing before speaking. Observing emotional reactions without immediately expressing them. These practices gradually rewire the relationship with experience. Completeness is revealed slowly, not dramatically. It grows familiar rather than impressive. Without discipline, attention is constantly pulled into comparison. Social standards, expectations, and imagined ideals create the sense that life is always behind. Discipline withdraws attention from these comparisons and returns it to direct experience. Direct experience does not compare, it simply is. In this isness, completeness is self-evident. The breath is enough, the moment is enough. The greatest paradox is that striving for completeness reinforces the feeling of lack. Discipline ends this striving by shifting focus from acquisition to perception. When perception changes, reality appears differently. The same life, the same conditions, the same challenges, yet the inner experience transforms. Satisfaction arises not from having more, but from seeing clearly. Discipline and attention do not promise constant pleasure. They offer something more reliable, coherence. Thoughts, actions, and values begin to align. This alignment reduces inner conflict. Where conflict fades, peace emerges. Peace reveals completeness. Because completeness was never absent, it was obscured by inner division. Ultimately, discipline is an act of humility. It acknowledges that the mind left unchecked creates confusion. Attention is an act of love. It gives full presence to what is here. When humility and love meet in daily practice, life reveals its inherent sufficiency. There is nothing missing from this moment. What was missing was our attention. Many people wait for life to become extraordinary before they allow themselves to feel grateful or responsible. They believe meaning will appear once circumstances improve, once recognition arrives, or once struggle disappears. Way of thinking postpones purpose and weakens inner strength. Meaning is not produced by rare events, it is cultivated through daily orientation. Gratitude and responsibility are not emotional reactions to a good life. They are disciplined attitudes that transform ordinary life into something deeply meaningful. Gratitude begins with perception. It is the ability to notice what is functioning rather than obsess over what is lacking. The human mind has a natural bias toward problems. It scans for threats, compares, and focuses on deficiencies. This bias may be useful for survival, but when left unchecked, it erodes contentment. Gratitude retrains attention. It does not deny difficulty, it balances it. When attention includes what is already supporting us, life feels less hostile and more cooperative. Gratitude is often mistaken for politeness or positive thinking. In reality, it is a form of realism. To breathe without effort, to see, to hear, to move, to think. These are not achievements, they are ongoing gifts. Familiarity makes them invisible. Gratitude restores visibility. When the ordinary is seen clearly, it reveals its extraordinary nature. This shift does not require new possessions or dramatic change. It requires attention. Responsibility complements gratitude by turning appreciation into action. Gratitude without responsibility can become passive, even complacent. Responsibility without gratitude becomes heavy and resentful. Together, they create balance. Responsibility means recognizing one's role in shaping experience. It is the understanding that while not everything is controllable, responses always are. This recognition restores agency. Life no longer feels like something that happens to us, but something we participate in. Many avoid responsibility because they associate it with blame. True responsibility is not self-punishment, it is self-honesty. It acknowledges where choices exist and where they do not. When responsibility is accepted, excuses lose their power. Energy previously spent on justification becomes available for growth. This shift alone transforms daily life. Ordinary moments become opportunities to practice integrity, patience, and awareness. Gratitude changes how responsibility is carried. When a person is grateful for the chance to act, effort feels purposeful rather than burdensome. Work becomes contribution instead of obligation. Challenges become training instead of punishment. Even routine tasks gain dignity when they are seen as expressions of care and competence. Meaning grows not from what is done, but from how it is done. Without gratitude, people often measure life by comparison. They look at what others have and feel behind. This comparison drains meaning from personal experience. Gratitude returns attention to direct reality. What is present now? What is usable? What is alive? From this grounding, responsibility becomes clearer. Actions are chosen based on values rather than envy. Life feels aligned rather than rushed. Responsibility also includes responsibility for one's inner state. Many believe emotions are caused solely by external events. While events trigger reactions, how those reactions are processed is an internal responsibility. Taking responsibility for emotional responses does not mean suppressing them. It means observing them, understanding them, and choosing how to express them. This maturity deepens relationships and reduces unnecessary conflict. Gratitude softens the heart, making responsibility sustainable. Without gratitude, discipline becomes rigid. With gratitude, discipline becomes devotion. One wakes up earlier not out of force, but appreciation for time. One takes care of the body, not out of fear, but respect. Ordinary self-care becomes meaningful because it is rooted in acknowledgement of life's value. Meaning emerges when actions align with appreciation. When someone is grateful for their abilities, they feel responsible to use them well. When someone is grateful for support received, they feel responsible to contribute in return. This natural reciprocity creates purpose. Purpose does not need to be dramatic. Teaching patiently, listening fully, working honestly. These acts quietly shape a meaningful life. Many people search for meaning through intensity or constant change. They believe meaning must be exciting or exceptional. This belief creates restlessness. Gratitude reveals that depth does not require novelty. Responsibility reveals that impact does not require fame. A stable, ordinary life lived with care can carry profound meaning. The difference lies in orientation, not circumstance. Gratitude also transforms hardship. When difficulty is met with gratitude for the lesson, rather than resentment toward the situation, suffering is reduced. This does not romanticize pain, it contextualizes it. Responsibility then asks, what can be learned, adjusted, or strengthened here? This approach turns setbacks into development. Meaning grows through engagement, not avoidance. Ordinary life is filled with small moments that shape character. How one speaks when tired, how one responds when misunderstood, how one behaves when no one is watching. Gratitude brings awareness to these moments. Responsibility gives them weight. Together, they elevate the mundane into practice. Life becomes less about chasing highlights and more about refining conduct. When gratitude is absent, people often feel entitled, and entitlement breeds dissatisfaction. When responsibility is absent, people feel powerless. Gratitude counters entitlement by reminding us that much is given, not owed. Responsibility counters powerlessness by reminding us that choice still exists. This combination creates grounded confidence. Confidence rooted in realism, not illusion. Over time, gratitude and responsibility reshape identity. One no longer defines oneself by external status, but by inner orientation. I am someone who notices and responds. This identity is stable. It does not collapse under change. Meaning becomes consistent rather than conditional. Ultimately, life does not need to be extraordinary to be meaningful. It needs to be met consciously. Gratitude opens the eyes to what is already here. Responsibility opens the hands to act wisely with it. When these two qualities guide daily life, even the simplest routine becomes an expression of purpose. Meaning is no longer searched for, it is practiced.